we're talking about power and position, and the thing about blockchain is that it is promising to be disruptive. It is going to change the way things are done. The financial services industry is at the forefront of that. Some of the best use cases that are out there that are being deployed now are in the financial services industry. And we're going to be bringing up a panel, and we're going to have a little introduction to that panel from somebody who is at a company that is at the forefront of the debate about what is going to be the tension between the old and the new. She has tremendous background in the space of securities, originally with Standard Chartered, but now she is the managing director for Securities, Trust, and Standards Asia Pacific for a company that underlies the entire global financial system. Ladies and gentlemen, she's going to introduce our panel. Please welcome Lisa O'Connor from Swift.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Really
All right.
appreciate the great introduction, and hello, everyone. I can't really see anyone out there, but I'm going to ask a question and hope I can see hands. How many of you in the room today come from the financial services industry? Okay, we have a few. Hi, Daniel. So the purpose of today's discussion is to just really introduce the panel that we're going to have later, which is around blockchain and the practical applications in the financial services world. Just a little bit before I get started on what I'm going to talk about, a little bit about Swift. So Swift went a few years ago to Silicon Valley, where we went and we met with many investors and many startup companies. And at the time, there was a view from a few people in a room who said that Swift is actually the oldest private cloud in the financial services world. So this is something that makes us quite proud. We are happy to be something that underpins the financial services community, but we know that that is not enough going forward. We know that the financial services community is evolving. We know that there are new technologies that are coming in. And we know that while these new technologies are not the answer to every problem that exists, there's quite a few problems that we can address with new technologies. So Swift has been working for a while on proof of concepts around DLT. You might remember in the past, in 2017 and 2018, we did proof of concepts which were in the news. But we've never really come out yet to share our vision on how we will interact with DLT. The interesting part about this is that our vision is something that we have that we should be quite proud of. So Swift is a member-owned cooperative. We are owned by the banks who use us. And the nice thing about it is we have 11,000 plus members in our network. What does that mean? It effectively means that we connect up the financial services world together with their clients. And what we are looking at is DLT-based services, potentially our own or third parties, and how do we connect those 11,000 members to those services? Now, what's important about this is really we are waiting for the right time, the right moment. We know that the technology is emerging and that firms' business use cases are emerging. We are trying, we are failing together with our members, which is great. But really what we do is we aim to complement the DLT technologies that exist in the market and their benefits. And we also aim to provide the platform for our community to connect into those. So it's really all about a DLT marketplace. It's about DLT services, either ours or third parties. It's about the community that has always been the power engine behind Swift. It's about the common standards. And I'll take a moment, just because standards is in my title, to talk a little bit about standards. So when I say common standards, what I mean by this is the financial industry speaks in a language. That language in the future will be something called ISO 20022. This is very important because it is a language that is being used by the web. For example, there's a group that works on the development of web applications around payments called W3C. This group is looking at payment initiations from the web, and they're looking at how do they leverage ISO 20022, and they will leverage ISO 20022 as a standard. Even when we look in the interbank space, this is also the language that is spoken. So everywhere from the consumer all the way through to the interbank space, we are using a common language. Why does this matter? It matters because it can help to foster innovation. I'll give an example of that. We work very closely in Australia with a real-time payments platform called NPP, or the National Payments Platform. This platform allows a payment to go between two individuals within a matter of seconds. It allows the users to be part of a different bank, and they can still pay each other within a matter of seconds. What's really nice about this platform is there's an overlay service that sits on top of this platform. This overlay service is hugely important for innovation in the future because what it's going to allow is fintech companies to connect in with a series of APIs to be able to connect into that platform. And that platform is entirely based on ISO 20022. So that's my little pitch on standards. I won't bore you anymore on that topic, but that is the standard of the future. And then, of course, network. Swift is well known around identity management, its security, et cetera, things that we're world-class on and we hope to leverage as part of our strategy around DLT. So the panel will talk more about use cases, but as a former person in the security services industry, I'd like to share with you a few of those use cases that I think might be interesting. How many people in the audience own a mutual fund? Okay, that's not a lot. We have some tough times coming ahead, Leo. But anyway, for those of you who own a mutual fund, you will realize that you've entrusted an asset manager with your money for that fund, right? So you've entrusted them and you want them to do the right thing on your behalf. So as a result, an asset manager has a responsibility to vote, and you, even as an individual holder of a security, maybe want to vote on the securities that you hold. So this is important in a lot of ways, and it is an area of our industry where we've had very little transparency in the past, both for individual investors, seeing that their votes have counted, and also even for the agents who help those funds and investors do their voting. So what Swift has done together with SLIB, which is a company in France who offers a proxy voting platform, and the Singapore Exchange, as well as several large custodians, is we worked on deploying a solution, a proof of concept, around proxy voting. So this will be everything from the pre-voting all the way through the entire voting process that we are going to address. It is a solution whereby we are working with a third-party provider where we will use messaging and/or APIs to work on the updates to that DLT instance. It is using our common standard, which is ISO 20022, and we will be having press coming out in the next few weeks about this. The idea is at the moment it's a proof of concept. We could go into production with this if it works, but what we normally do is we do proof of concepts. We know that they may or may not be successful. We will come to the end. We will do some sort of summary resolution on this, and then come out with some advice on how we move forward. So keep tuned to those developments if you're interested. The other is really around, there's a lot of talk around payments and innovation in payments and making payments more real-time in the future. And many of you may or may not be aware that at Swift we have something called GPI, or the Global Payments Innovation, which is allowing to do cross-border payments in literally seconds, even into real-time systems. And this has caught a lot of traction, a lot of news, because we do about 300 billion a day in payments across our network, which are GPI. And we also do about 50% of all of our traffic, our GPI-related payments. So the friction that existed in the past of payments taking a long time to happen is no longer the case. It doesn't exist anymore. Now it is fast, now it is efficient, now the fees are transparent, and it gets to the end beneficiary in time and with all of that transparency provided. So as a result of that, it's caught a lot of motivation from DLT providers who are working in different spaces. And in this case, we're working with R3, who is a provider who is working on the problem of trade finance and the challenges that exist in trade finance. And what we're doing essentially is linking together all of the work that has been done in that DLT instance around trade finance to the actual payment leg of that trade. And this will be all done over GPI using our tracking, our end-to-end tracking of payments, which is quite exciting. So outside of that, we're working together with the banks on looking at things like SSIs, or standing settlement instructions, which is the main reason that settlements fail. And we are going to be doing that for OTC markets and taking a look at that. And lastly, and probably most importantly, I don't think if you're in the DLT space, anyone has missed the fact that ASX is probably the largest project around distributed ledger technology that exists in our industry and financial services. And ASX will be obviously implementing their DLT platform for clearing and settlement. So it's a full replacement of their post-trade system. It's really a hybrid clearing and settlement system, which is DLT based. They're working with a company called Digital Asset. They will be working and have been working with Swift over the last 2 years on how do you model that flow, how do you put that into a DLT instance using our library. And in addition to that, we will be a channel into that platform. So this is one that everybody from a market infrastructure perspective is looking at, market infrastructures across the world, and one that we think really has some true potential going forward. Banks will have the option either to use a messaging channel, to use an API to update the DLT node, or potentially to take a node themselves, which will provide real advantages as it relates to reporting, also some data analytics and et cetera that can be provided on top of that to help their clients better make decisions in the market. So I would like to thank you for your time. I've been told that my time is up. And invite the rest of the panel on the stage for a discussion around the proof of concepts.
All right, thank you very much, Lisa. Please take a seat. You've earned it after doing your duty on the main panel. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to bring the rest of the panel up. We're bringing all the big stars to you today. Our moderator for today's panel, you probably best know him from the global scene because he has a television show on CNBC Crypto Trader that is world known. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ran Neu Ner. Also the founder of On Capital Crypto Advisory and Creative Council in South Africa. Joining him and the rest of the panel today, we'd like to welcome Connie Leung, a great friend of the NexChange group. She is a senior director with Microsoft in charge of financial services. And we'd also like to welcome Leo Chen, managing director of funds management, over 20 years in the business funds management. He knows his stuff, and now, of course, it's going blockchain. Ran Neu Ner, it's all yours. Take it away. All right.
I've got it. So, Lisa, I know you think your time is up, but your time hasn't even started yet because I've got a lot of questions for you. And just for you guys, I want to spice it up a little bit. I'm on Twitter, @CryptoManRun. Any questions that you want to ask the panel? I'm going to open up the panel to you guys. Just tweet me @CryptoManRun, and your questions will be asked to the panel. So I know we've all got mobile phones. We're all on Twitter, @CryptoManRun, and your questions will go onto the panel. So I'm going to keep looking at my phone. And I think the purpose behind today's panel is to talk about practical applications of blockchain technology in the financial industry. And they said to speak about it in Asia. And I'm not sure I want to keep it to Asia. I think I want to keep it around the whole world. Before we start, if we could just get a brief introduction from all my guests. Lisa, you have had an introduction. Is there anything that you want to add to your introduction?
No, thank you.
Good. Leo, over to you. Specifically, your name, what you're doing here, what your interest is in blockchain technology.
So my name's Leo Chen. I work for Callisto. We're actually the world's largest funds transaction network. So we've been around for the last 10 years. We have clients in over 40 different countries, 1,700 different clients, and we're carrying over 10 million transactions per month with a consideration of over $170 billion in pounds per month. So why is it a big interest for us about blockchain? Well, having one of the largest networks, it actually just made sense for us to roll our infrastructure onto a blockchain. This is where we're able to assist our clients and be able to save them time and money. And what we're actually seeing is potentially other use cases which are coming through, which will dramatically change the funds management industry.
So we're going to talk about that a whole lot more. One more question for you before we introduce Connie over here. When did you buy your first Bitcoin?
Would you believe I haven't?
You haven't bought a Bitcoin?
I'm from the funds industry, so for me it's always been about funds.
Connie, over to you. Let's start off with when you bought your first Bitcoin.
No, I haven't bought my Bitcoin.
What? Can I go?
When did you buy your first Bitcoin?
I was gifted some Bitcoin when my children were born. That's how much the world has changed. It was 2.5 years ago. My children were born, and a friend of mine said, "What would you like as a gift?" And he happens to be in this industry, and he gave me some Bitcoin.
Well, Lisa has triplets, so those Bitcoin have to be spread a long way. Connie, a brief introduction about who you are. You work at Microsoft, which is this big behemoth. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what Microsoft is doing in the blockchain space.
Well, first of all, I didn't buy Bitcoin. I did buy Microsoft stock. So when I joined Microsoft, it was at $30. So I'm pretty happy. Maybe not as happy of the Bitcoin world, but being a conservative person, I'm pretty happy for that investment. I actually joined Microsoft about 6 years. Before that, I was with Swift for 7 years. I have a very friendly colleague here. For Microsoft, I'm actually part of the worldwide industry team. I cover financial services, which includes bank, insurance, and capital markets. What we actually do is have an industry lens of how Microsoft is relevant and how are we helping our customer during this transformation when so much is going on in our industry for the last 6 years. Initially, when we roll out blockchain as a service from Microsoft, I'm actually the global lead for FSI for blockchain, so I have been doing the business development. I'll be very happy to share some of the use cases that I started off a few years back.
But Connie, is blockchain a focus area for Microsoft? Is it something that's spoken about every day at Microsoft?
Well, I don't think it really matters whether we speak about it from a Microsoft perspective. I think for us, our vision is really to empower every person, every organization to do more. So I think the conversation is really with our customers. I can say at the time where it started, it's really a hype, and it's been a conversation at most of the conference like Cyborgs and everything. Today, I would say it's one of the conversation. It's not the conversation. So I've seen that curve moving down, but it's still a significant conversation.
And you mentioned that the talk is amongst your customers and not necessarily the talk that's happening inside. Who are your customers that you can talk about that are using blockchain?
I think many. If you look at Microsoft, we actually, as a platform, so we have our first-party application, but we also have third-party application, and in fact, third-party is most. So from our perspective, third-party is really solutions providers, system integrators, technology. So Owltree is a good example, is our partner. We support Ethereum, we support Quorum, we support Chain, we support Hyperledger. Those are our partners. We also support a lot of applications providers who actually build applications with the, I would say, with the technology. So blockchain is just one piece of a puzzle. If you look at what Lisa presented, you have the API network, you need the web network, you need data lakes, you need all kinds of data, AI, and you need security. So I would say that you need to have a spectrum of platforms so that you can apply blockchain too. So from our perspective, it's really how we make the puzzle work for you. How can we accelerate that? So anyone who's really part of my ecosystem, anything on the open source, with our partners. And of course, ultimately, it's the customers too.
Leo, you're a veteran of this financial services industry. You were around in the days before blockchain, and now you're here and blockchain's taken over. How important is blockchain to what you guys are doing today?
I think I'll take a little bit step back. So for me, I used to work in IT operations before it got called fintech. So it's pretty much the same thing with the sexier word. And then now we're talking about distributed ledger technology and how it can help the entire industry. I think what's really important about the funds industry is the fact that it shrouds itself in this mystery. You buy funds, but you don't know how many units you're buying, and you only get told the next day or the day after on what you've actually purchased. Nowhere in this society do you actually do that now. You know exactly what you're buying. So, and then from there, the operations process behind that is just so complex. It's repetitive and mundane. So people are checking their records against someone else's records to make sure that they all tally at the end of each day, each week, each month. But can you imagine being on a distributed ledger where it is one central record and people don't need to double check anymore because it is a shared set of records. And then from there, you're able to build things like different products. So we've been hit in the equities market in the last sort of 18 months with the trade war. It is very volatile. Fund managers are finding it challenging because their performance has been low against the index. People are moving across into ETFs, which are considered listed type funds on the stock exchange, which are considerably cheaper. But can you imagine a fund which is released by the fund manager where they charge management fees specifically on what you as an underlying investor has performed? Now that really just changes the world. And in this current old infrastructure, you're not able to do that. So that's what's exciting about DLT.
So how far are we from these kind of systems being implemented?
Well, I think there's going to be different phases. All I can talk about is what we're doing at Calistone. So for us, it's quite exciting. We're moving onto a DLT infrastructure in May this year, so in a few more months' time.
So you're moving onto a fully DLT type infrastructure?
Yes, that's correct.
How long has this been in the making for? How long have you been working on developing this?
Me personally,
Well,
not that
the company,
long, but
Callisto.
the IT guys they've been looking at it for the past 3 years. We've run proof of concepts with our clients as well, and that was part of the initial phase. And it's really interesting. So we talk about an open blockchain and how sometimes it can be a bit slow. But what we've done for our blockchain is we are a existing network, so we have the transactions. We were able to put that onto our chain and process that within 20 minutes. That is what Callisto sees of the global funds transactions.
Okay, so Lisa, there is a question, before I get to you, there's a question coming from Scott in the crowd, and he says, Crypto Man Ran, happy to hear Lisa has Bitcoin. Well, her kids have Bitcoin.
Yeah, I
just
don't,
for the-
it's not in my name.
How is Swift and DLT technology innovative over distributed databases?
How is Swift and DLT technology innovative over distributed database? Okay, so let me just take a step back as well, because I think what's important that we were discussing something earlier that I think is an important point. Technology is an outcome. What technology, what platform, whatever you do, that should be the last thing you consider when you're considering a business problem. You need to consider what is the problem you are trying to solve, and what is the best way to do it. Therefore, what is the technology? So, in your question, existing Swift infrastructure, what exists today, what has been around for many years, we're already looking at how do we take friction out of things. So things like GPI, the global payment innovation, with being able to do cross-border payments in a matter of seconds, having transparency on fees, knowing when it hits the end beneficiary. This was something that used to take days to do, right? And we've already gotten it down to seconds, even cross-border into real-time systems. So that's one thing about taking friction out of what exists. If we talk about how are we innovating on top of that, that's really around how do we take what exists today, this network of 11,000 members of connections to financial institutions who are our owners around the world, and create any openness around that allows connectivity either to new blockchain instances which solve a business problem, which are ours, and or third parties. And that's some of the work that we're doing, for example, with SLIB, et cetera. So that's how we're looking at the world today. Like Connie said, though, it's not all about blockchain for us. It's about what is the business problem, and then what is the technology you're looking to address that with.
So let's talk about the business problem that Swift is probably most well known for. And that is, of course, bank-to-bank foreign exchange transfers. That's, I think, how I know Swift, and probably everybody in the crowd knows Swift. From your presentation, it's clear that Swift does a whole lot more, but I think when Crypto Twitter talks about Swift, they talk about that. Specifically around bank-to-bank foreign exchange money transfers. Are you guys currently using digital ledger technology?
At the moment, no, but we'd be very open to work with those who are. At the moment, there is some development that's happening in the market infrastructure space around that, and we intend to support those market infrastructures who are doing it. But will we, Swift, do a netting and a clearing facility for interbank treasury transactions? No, that's not the business we're in. We will help facilitate market infrastructures who would look to do that, or other DLT providers who would look to do that.
So do projects like Ripple and Stellar, do those threaten that part of your business?
I think the numbers speak for themselves. With GPI, we do 300 billion a day. We have 6,000 financial institutions, over 50% of our traffic using GPI. We have solved the issue of payments being slow. The banks have solved the issue, not we. We, together with the banks, have solved the issue of payments being slow. As it relates to the FX component of that and what's done by others, the banks are playing the role that they play. Again, we'd be happy to help, but we are governed and driven by our members. And our members saw the friction in payments, and that has been resolved in our opinion.
Yeah. So
Can I add to that
Sure.
conversation, if you don't mind? I think, coming from Swift, I have a little bit background of that. But coming out of Swift, being in Microsoft, we have a different perspective as well. I think the world has been so siloed, and that has been the problem. You give a problem to Swift, but Swift is only bank to bank. And do you really know what the underlying payment is for? No, because you have no visibility of that data. And that's the reason why we have a technology like cloud or blockchain or whatever. You think about trade, right? I covered trade for SWIFT for 7 years. The problem with trade is it's bank to bank, knows what's happening with the LCs or guarantees or whatever. But the one who's actually doing the trade transaction is between the corporates. It's the buyer and the seller exchanging a PO and invoices and the goods in between and everything. So along the line of the entire trade process, it's a broken chain. That's exactly why blockchain is a good use case. And we've
Connie,
been.
I agree with you for trade, but I think you're completely off as it relates to payments. But I agree with you for trade.
No, I think the payments, I've been speaking so much on the payment side, so I can tell you about AML, right? On the payment side, if I'm making a payment, I send a payment message, I send a TT form to the bank, and I say I need to send $500,000 to the US. You have no idea why I'm sending that payment. I might be paying for a school fee, which could be legitimate, but I might be paying for someone who's actually not related, or I might be making a rice payment for a country where it actually doesn't produce rice. That's where we have done the DLT project on that one, is to enrich the data before you send it to SWIFT so that I know exactly what you're making that payment for, and I can enhance my AML. So I think you can't really isolate the transaction. That's why you need
From
to have
an
an
AML
inclusive.
perspective, I would agree.
Yeah,
So
with
it's
what
not
you're
only
saying.
about AML, it's also about full transparency, like you
The
say.
whole value chain
sending-
needs to be digital, and along the digital line, that's where technology comes to play, and you can choose the right technology profile.
Leo, I'm looking at you. In your industry, in the fund management industry, where funds have been criticized for not being very transparent, how are they responding to rolling out DLT and making everything that they do extremely transparent?
Look, I think with any industry, you're going to get people who are more proactive, and some fund managers are actually trying to diversify and do something about it. But then within the whole industry, there's also fund managers who are laggards, who are just going to adopt the whole wait and see. I guess the key message here is that DLT is coming, or blockchain is coming. It's not imaginary. It is here. My encouragement to the fund managers and all the counterparties in the industry is start exploring, start finding the use cases where it can actually help you become more efficient and sustainable.
Yeah. So there is a question here from Crypto Jew, Lindsay Jew, who's sitting here in the crowd, and she asks a very interesting question. She says, Crypto Man Run, do you think there's a conflict between large institutions, and I'm looking at all three of you because all three of you are from large institutions. Do you think that there's a conflict between large institutions and the philosophy behind crypto and decentralization? Lisa, you're nodding, so over to you.
Okay, so I'll just say this as this is a personal comment for those who are media in the room. I believe in decentralized ledgers. I like the concept of technology being a component of building trust. Having my background being in banking and technology, I obviously believe in those two things, right? And I believe that there's a role to play. I think that large institutions have interests. And I think that it's very interesting to see from an innovation lab perspective how those interests are aligned with their customers and with the market in general. And that's the comment I would make on that. I think that innovation labs that exist in large organizations are fantastic ideas and concepts. I think really letting them run and letting them be free is the way that large organizations break the mindset of what they might have been stuck in the past.
But larger organizations are exactly what blockchain promises to break down. Blockchain promises to disintermediate big institutions and to hand the power over to a decentralized world. I mean, is that a big threat to all of your organizations? And Lisa, I'm going to look at you because I see on Twitter every day that Ripple is threatening to disintermediate you. Stellar is threatening to disintermediate you, and Bitcoin apparently has already.
It's interesting. I think you have to look at some of these underlying technologies and look to see if they really are decentralized ledgers or not. That would be my challenge.
You mean Ripple?
I'm not saying any names. I'm just, are they or are they not is the question, right? Is it just putting the interest in another hand that may or may not be governed by the right interests? Is it, all of these questions are questions we have to ask ourselves as we go into the future of finance and the future of what technology means for finance. And governance is a massive angle that needs to be addressed, right? Where do you want that power to sit? And I do agree with you over time. Obviously, all of our business models will change. But is the underlying technology we're looking at, is it hype around blockchain or is it actually blockchain?
Okay, so I have another question here. The question comes from Comic San. It says, Crypto Man Ran, question to Calastone. In a fully DLT-powered infrastructure, how do you monetize services? Someone in the supply chain must be losing money somewhere. Who does?
How we look at monetizing, it's actually per usage. So at the end of the day, we're an infrastructure provider in the traditional funds industry. Our clients are fund managers, transfer agencies, custodial banks, and big distribution banks. So for them, how we've traditionally priced has always been on who gets the most benefit, and we will continue doing that in our pricing with the blockchain scenario that we're coming through. So in some cases, there will be benefits for the fund manager.
But certainly, surely the customer, the investor, is the guy that benefits the
Oh, yes,
most.
definitely.
And I don't want to pay, as an investor, I don't want to pay any more for getting transparency. I think that's something that my fund manager should offer me as a service.
Yep, totally agree. Let's not even talk about the crypto side or DLT side, but under the traditional Calastone thing, we automate those transactions. So a big fact, did you know traditionally a managed fund transaction, potentially once it hits the funds manager, for every transaction it costs 25 to 20 euros to actually process manually. That's really expensive for a manual transaction if you think about the millions of transactions that happen daily. We have reduced that so that no one needs to process manually, reduces risk, and it actually reduces the cost, which actually impacts the management expense ratio, which then benefits the underlying customer.
So the customer does, the investor does eventually get things. Now there's a big red screen flashing here. It says time is up, but before I let you guys go, you're all part of big organizations and you're talking about distributed ledger technology and you're talking about blockchain. When you talk about blockchain, do you ever refer to public blockchains? Or when you talk about blockchains, are we always referring to private internal blockchains?
I can go first. For us, we're relatively agnostic. We work with a lot of market infrastructures that are working on blockchain. What we do is we supply the business model, the business flows, and the data model that underpins that. And in the future, opening up, obviously, to be more of a platform for that. But it is guided by our members, by our market infrastructures that we work with.
Leo, in your industry, could you rely on a public blockchain with the transparency that a public blockchain brings?
I won't comment on the actual public blockchain side of things, but what we're working on is a private blockchain. And why is that? Because in the funds management industry, if you're one fund manager and a competing fund manager, you don't want to know where that money's actually come from, because in essence, you can actually go and try and get that client on board. So in this industry, it's a private blockchain. You're only allowed to see what you're allowed to see. So it kind of doesn't fit in for us in what we do.
So it's kind of like half the use of a blockchain. Connie, your clients, public blockchains or private blockchains?
Well, I cover financial services industry, so I would say that most of them are obviously consortium private based. But I think in the reality, if I might just make one comment on the earlier question about is blockchain a threat to large organization, I think you really need to ask yourself these days, not because of blockchain or anything, it's because of the disruption we're facing. What is our own core value? And the core value is really your brand, the trust. And if you don't have that, you don't have anything. So blockchain actually gives you the trust. And that was breaking down the barriers. And technology is one way of getting your margin down, so hopefully the end users, the consumers or the corporates will be paying less. That's the reason why we're here. So we're not here to try and fit a puzzle with particular technology. I think that's where people get it wrong. It's like nobody call me and say, Connie, I want to buy some blockchain tomorrow, or I want to buy some cloud tomorrow. No, we're here to talk about problems. And to be honest, we have tons of problems in our financial service industry. How many papers you're still dealing with? That's a use case for blockchain. So to me, it's really not about private, open, whatever. We have tons of technology in front of us. In our industry, we never even use 10% of it. So think about that as your trigger to try and make yourself efficient and more, I would say, sustainable business.
So it's as Lisa said, first find the problem, then think of a solution, and then implement the technology.
I don't
Guys,
think you need to find a problem. We have many problems.
And don't worry about failing. Don't worry, be crappy.
Exactly.
Yeah, don't worry about failing. Guys, our time is up and everyone's shouting at us over here. We are going to be filming a show around Hong Kong Blockchain Week, which is going to be broadcast on CNBC. If you want to come through to our stand, if you've got any ideas, maybe if you want an interview, just come and knock at our stand at CNBC Crypto Trader. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Big offer
Thank
from
you.
Ran Crypto Man from the CNBC Crypto Trader and his own company On Capital. Thank you so much, Ran. Absolutely bang up job. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lisa, for coming from Swift. Leo from Calzone. You're going to take a picture? Yeah, Ran, of course they want to get a picture of you guys. You look fantastic. There we go. And thank you for bringing the goods to us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have one more round of applause for our panel. Fantastic. Thank you. Put those hands together.